I would like to start off with the introductions. I think I'm going to ask John Sweeney to do the introductions, and if possible, I'm going to have him kind of toss the ball to the next person and kind of like keep it going instead of me having to intervene. Hopefully we'll get to everyone. If for some reason you get passed up, please don't hesitate to speak up. I'll try and keep track of everyone. I have to confess that right now my grid is not showing everybody, so I've got to solve that problem myself. But while I solve that, I'm going to ask John to go ahead and start introductions.
Before you do that, John, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, which will probably help with the viewing of the participants. I think we've all got the agenda figured out, so I will do that. And then John, take it away.
Great. Hi, everybody. Just great to see this community coming together. This is like for me, like a dream come true. So I'm so appreciative to April and Joan. I felt like at different times, as I'm sure Joan could attest, that at Children's Place International, when we started our work, when it was founded 12 years ago, we were just operating in a silo, and really I've always wanted more community interaction to share lessons learned and experiences and opportunities. So big thank you to April and Joan for doing this. Just a little bit about CPI on the intro side of things. So John Sweeney, I'm director of CPI and played a role in co-founding CPI 12, 13 years ago. And really what we're about is empowering children and adolescents out of poverty through focused whole family programming on health, education, and income generation. And the way that we approach the work is really through partnerships. Our role has evolved over the years, but where we're really focusing our energies is on creating and managing very engaged partnerships between frontline NGOs who are operating in sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean, and resource partners back here in the Midwest, whether they be individual philanthropists or organizations, universities, or private sector partners. So just a couple of quick examples of this would be one of our early partnerships was between some NGOs operating in Southern Africa, Meringue Child Care Network of Trust in Botswana, and Amodefo, Mozambique. And we partnered the University of Michigan with them to address a number of needs that those organizations had in the areas of HIV and AIDS relative to kids. More recently, one of our largest partnerships right now is with Takeda Pharmaceuticals, where we have partnered them with NGOs working in Kenya, for those who know AMPATH Kenya, and then in Tanzania, Kilimanjaro Christian Medical Center, and then also in Haiti, and Partners in Health. And Takeda provides skilled volunteers, but also most significantly probably are the financial resources to help those frontline organizations do more of what they do best. So maybe I'll just stop there, and if that's a good enough intro, and just looking at my little view here, I'll toss to the next person I see. How about Emily Snyder?
Great, hi. My name's Emily. I'm actually stepping in for Jaylon, who is busy working on exciting proposals. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But from Refugee, so we are an international NGO. Our headquarters are here in Chicago, but all of our work takes place in Nairobi in Kenya. We work with unaccompanied and orphaned refugee girls who are coming from all around the region. And providing holistic support. So everything from education programming to a safe place to live, childcare, and case management, which is kind of the thread among all of our programs. And then we do have an empowerment initiative as well, called the Artisan Collective, which is our social enterprise piece. And we have been around for 12 years, I think now. So excited to be part of this community and this conversation. And then I guess I'll pass it along. to, let's see, Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Cole, and delighted to be a part of this as well. I am the executive director of an organization called Rise International. We are based in our offices in a northern suburb of Chicago, but our focus, our mission is to build primary schools in rural Angola, Africa. And so we began, it was out of a relational start, as many things are, but we've been building schools since 2003 when the war ended there. There was a long civil war. And we've built 188 schools, and there's over 135,000 kids in those schools each year. So pretty incredible, very, very rewarding thing to be a part of. And so I will pass it to Nelly.
Hi, I'm Nelly Ingram. I'm the Deputy Director of UNICEF USA here in the Midwest region. UNICEF USA is part of the UNICEF family. And of course, UNICEF is a global organization working to promote the rights of children everywhere. Here in the United States, we fundraise, educate, and advocate on behalf of UNICEF. My role in particular in the Midwest is working with major gift donors. So I have recently really been in the trenches with our donors, which is why I've also pulled in our regional managing director, Beth Mccostlin, who has a more bird's eye view of our response and pivot in COVID. So I'm going to kick it over to Beth to introduce herself too.
Perfect. Thanks, Nelly. Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Oops, there we go. Hi, I'm Beth Mccostlin. As Nelly had mentioned, I serve as the regional director here in Chicago on behalf of our Midwest family. We have a team here that helps connect our supporters across the region with UNICEF's work for children globally. Our team here is responsible for a couple business lines, if you will, but we also support our colleagues across a whole portfolio of work, whether that's tackling the eradication of polio with our good friends at Rotary Foundation, or supporting some of our corporate partner development and whatnot from here as well. So as Nelly mentioned, we're working to elevate UNICEF's work for children globally, but it's on all things that are impacting kids. And it's just been fascinating to see just really how much our everyday work for the last 74 years is very present in everything that we're doing right now. I think from me, Cena, I think you may be the next one on my screen.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Well, my name is Cena Jacob, and I'm a founder of a small nonprofit called Bookwalla, and I founded it 10 years ago and left the corporate world after doing some soul searching. And to make a long story short, it came down to understanding I'm originally from India, and I found out that visiting the US libraries growing up here and accessing beautiful storybooks like the Cinderellas of the world, Chronicles of Narnia, Little House on the Prairie, helped me get through a long-term childhood trauma. And because of the inspiring stories and the hero's journey, struggle and overcoming. And so 10 years ago, after doing some soul searching, I left the corporate world, as I mentioned, founded the organization thinking that I could share that joy and that power to orphans around the world. And soon after I started, I found out that we need to do a little bit more than just giving a book to an orphanage. And so we not only provide storybooks, but we build beautiful libraries. I'm a big believer in open bookshelves, art, all of that to create that in positive healing environment. And the third component is a dedicated volunteer force on the grounds, mostly focused right now in India, to actually read the stories weekly and conduct activities and sessions around the social emotional messages of these storybooks. So we have about 2,500 children living in about 19 projects of ours 18 of which are orphanages within India. And they come from all kinds of backgrounds. I'm sure all of you know even more so about the world of all of this, but they come from HIV/AIDS to girls being abused of all kinds to children of farmers who have been, their parents have committed suicide because of severe drought conditions, and now they're living in orphanages. So it's been a learning journey. I've been just kind of rolling up my sleeves, trying something, figuring it out, and then moving forward with all of it. But the whole purpose of the organization is to heal kids and really get through that psychological aspect, with literacy being only the secondary component. So thank you.
Great. How about maybe next we could have Josh?
Okay, sorry. I should have called someone.
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Grosski. I am the founder and CEO of a social enterprise called Unlocking Communities, and our mission is to transform communities to sell sustainable products through a hyper-local distribution model combined with business education training. Currently, we are working in 13 communities in Haiti, have impacted nearly 1,000 families in the last year by selling locally made water filtration systems, and have trained over 150 entrepreneurs in those communities. We are looking to undergo rapid expansion in Haiti and also then franchise our model globally over the next 2 years through some thought partners, and really providing other organizations a framework at which they can sell to the base of the pyramid in those rural communities that get overlooked when products like this penetrate in some of the urban markets. So I will pass it on to Molly.
I think we were both unmuting. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly McCready. I'm the Executive Director of CROSO, which stands for Child Restoration Outreach Support Organization. We are a small nonprofit based here in Chicago that provides college scholarships or post-secondary scholarships for former street children in Uganda. So we partner on the ground with an organization that's been working in 4 specific communities in Uganda since 1992. We've had this scholarship program since 2007, and our scholars are all studying within the country. So they're all in Uganda. They study a variety of courses. They study at lots of different institutions. So I'm sure, as we'll talk about in some of the future questions, a lot of our response has been needing to understand and coordinate all of the different ways that our scholars are being impacted by this pandemic and the different messaging that they're all getting. Yeah, we're so excited that this coalition is getting started and an opportunity to collaborate with other leaders in the Chicago area. So it's great to meet all of you. I'll pass it on to Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Powley. I'm Director of Grants Management at the MacArthur Foundation, and I'm here today in an observer and learning mode. And I will take you seriously, Joan, about honoring the time of the nonprofits, and I will leave my introduction at that. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it to Sarita.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you all for having me on. My name is Sarita Sandosham. I'm the Executive Director of Heartland Alliance International, which is the international arm of Heartland Alliance that's been around for over 100 years. The focus of Heartland Alliance International has been around human rights and providing specifically mental health and access to justice services to vulnerable communities. We're talking about survivors of torture, refugees, internally displaced people. And we're doing this in 8 countries, in the Middle East, in Latin America, and also in sub-Saharan Africa. And just to say that in this last year, we have, through our services, advocacy, impacted more than 400,000 people. And I'm very excited to be part of this because I think it's going to be learning, but also cathartic. So I'm not sure who to pass this on to. So April, will you call someone?
Yes, Catherine, if you want to jump in now, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, I'm Catherine Bissell Cordova, and I am the Executive Director of Chicago Fair Trade. I used to work at Kovler Center. Hello. Anyhow, and this is really exciting to me. So we were started in 2006 as a project of Oxfam. Just seeing fair trade as such a powerful tool for poverty alleviation. So we have we're a membership organization. We have faith-based organizations locally, individuals who are committed to fair trade and its principles, academic institutions, nonprofits such as Oxfam America is a member, but our biggest part of our membership, we started with 3 business members in 2006, and we now have 60 business members who are locally owned fair trade businesses, including Refugee. Hi, Emily. And of those, 55 of them work globally. Some are businesses, some are nonprofits, some that are businesses have nonprofits as well, but all have the social mission of lifting people out of poverty and treating them with dignity and respect and environmental sustainability and all of the good things that fair trade is, as well as a handful of local social enterprises such as Sweet Beginnings out of North Lawndale Employment Network, Bright Endeavors out of New Moms, Loom out of Chicago Charities. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. So thank you.
Joan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joan Lundgren with the Chicago Community Trust. I'm also joining today as an observer, but previously spent about 15 years with CARE, the international NGO. So I feel like I'm back with my people. Very, very excited to hear what everyone has to say today.
And Carrie?
Hi everyone, happy Friday. My name is Carrie Miner. I'm coming from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. Also an observer today, and I'm just excited to learn from you all. So thanks for having us.
I believe that's everyone that whose organization has been included. I'd like to shift now to hear from the nonprofits about ways that your programming in the field has had to pivot in response to the pandemic. If there are specific experiences that you'd like to share about what that has looked like and the challenges that it has presented. I am affiliated with a nonprofit that is not Chicago-based that works in Haiti doing breast cancer research, and they've turned to providing soap and water and hiring people to make masks. So very, very off mission, but an example of how this is necessitating all kinds of flexibility. So if you could just pop in, I think if you hold your space bar down while you talk, that's probably the fastest way to kind of jump in, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, whatever's most comfortable. Go ahead, thanks.
Right, so this is anybody speaks, is that right? Is that, okay. Josh, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I'll go ahead, yeah. So our work in Haiti was really focused and is focused around long-term development in the WASH space. So as I say, we were doing COVID prevention since the day we started through our WASH education work we do in communities and selling water filtration systems. But what's interesting is because our systems are meant as a long-term investment, we have undertaken some initiatives to subsidize them in communities a little bit and give scholarships and ensure affordability, while also not wanting to undermine our social enterprise efforts across the country. We were supposed to be rapidly expanding into about another 20 to 50 communities in Haiti this year. And so we've had to slow that down, but we've come up with ways at which we can sell in more communities and train people one-on-one. So we're training entrepreneurs one-on-one, and they're still selling water filtration systems. And since we're hyper-local, we're able to really continue amidst this time. Our collection rates have slowed down a little bit, but that's as expected during this time. But it's been exciting. I mean, Haiti has a big wave coming in our collaborations with the Clinton Foundation. We get the updated updates, and it's going to be a really rough next 6 months. So it's kind of taken a pause, but we've been able to really hunker down on the work we're doing and are excited to continue to expand it.
Sarita, did you want to?
So, you know, for us, right, there has to be a recognition. We have over 300 staff around the world. And the challenge is understanding that the political and public health systems for our staff and our communities that we serve are very different. And that's been the thing that we've been dealing with. And I'm going to call this period the survival period, because we're entering a phase where we don't quite know what this pandemic is doing to us, and it's impacting all of our different countries. And then on top of that, you have the backdrop of, you know, the fact that we have to remain vigilant to the likelihood of more unrest, instability, and enhanced conflict. So given that our services have been around mental health and in the lockdown, we have moved to remote working. And it's created a recognition of disparity. I mean, this is where you see the digital divide really come up, right? So for a lot of our countries, it's an issue of the kind of infrastructure that you have to be able to do remote working using various platforms. And even in the US, right, where a lot of our staff here have moved to remote work, the infrastructure isn't there to support them in terms of providing the kind of mental health services that people are used to getting if you're seeing them face to face. And so we've had to build the capacity of our clients, in addition to our own capacity, understand issues of confidentiality, which you sort of take for granted if you're meeting your clients face to face. And, you know, with refugees and survivors of torture, you're also thinking about the economic issues, right, that have impacted them as a result of the loss of jobs. So how do you manage all of that? And, you know, we're not pivoting. I think what we're doing is we're navigating and adapting in this period to figure out how best to serve them. And we're learning as we're going along. And, you know, I would use the metaphor of, for our staff, whether they're here in the US or globally, it's important that we put the oxygen mask on them, making sure that they're safe, that they're secure, that they are stable, right? And then providing the necessary support to the clients that we serve and the vulnerable populations. And it goes through a number of different things, including the kind of security that you need, right, around health, providing sanitation, getting gloves, masks. Those things seem, you know, in some countries, they seem like the US should be able to provide it to them. Well, if you look at the data, we're worse off than they are, right? So it's been managing that diversity. And what's been great is just recognizing that the innovation of our staff, right, to come up with amazing innovations. So in one example I heard from Kovler Center was how, you know, ordinarily a therapist in providing support to a survivor of torture in checking the pain points, right? Using video and recognizing that that person was not comfortable, she basically used the wife to be able to help her. And that's something, right, that if we hadn't had this pandemic, we wouldn't be doing that because it crosses boundaries. And so there's been a need to innovate in this period. And for us, right, the question now is, how do we take those innovations, recognize that the new normal will have some streamlining of this pandemic going through, and how do you apply it moving forward? The other thing I would say is using video. I mean, the notion of how you look, you know, you're obsessed about your kids walking in, your cat walking in, how are you seen, right? It seems like a small matter, but if you watch CNN all the time, you're thinking, do you need Botox? How about your makeup? What about false eyelashes? These are things that seem ordinary, but they are taking up more time in people's minds, and it adds to the stress, right? And the other thing I would say in terms of the workforce, how are we creating the balance and creating the boundaries between the personal and the work? It's very bound up together. And so we don't have all of the answers, but we're trying to create the space for those conversations to happen. And as we have them with our staff, we know it's also happening with our vulnerable populations, who, by the way, right, live in places where social distancing in many cases is not an option. So, how do you protect them? How do you protect yourself in order to protect them? Those are the kinds of things that keep us up at night, you know? So anyway, let me just stop there. Pass it back.
I do think that we are all experiencing this necessity as the mother of invention, and that we are inventing strategies to deal with unprecedented and previously unthinkable challenges. But I am hopeful that, being the eternal optimist that I am, I'm hopeful that we will discover strategies that can address inequality, that can make things more equitable, make things more focused on content, etc. But I'll stop and let some other nonprofits share some of their strategies.
I'd be happy to jump in. If only to say that I echo so much of what you had just shared. I think we very much have been in the same boat. I might speak to it in just sort of two buckets. One, to say at UNICEF USA, we, thank goodness, made the switch to Zoom. I think it was in maybe January or February. Wholesale moved the whole organization onto Zoom. And like the first week of working from home, everyone was just like high-fiving remotely our IT team for having the thought to bring us into this space. Previously, we had been disrupted from a sort of infrastructure and technology perspective. Our national headquarters is based in Lower Manhattan, and so after Hurricane Sandy, our server room was underwater and had to go through all sorts of different things. So the IT team has been thinking sort of ahead about how do we make sure that if something were to come up, that we can all continue on with business. So we felt pretty good about making sort of that switch to working from home. We have about 275 staff members across the US who are now working in all of these different places. I think to your point about the air mask first, I was feeling very grateful as a mom of a kindergartner and a first grader, and working for an organization that puts every child first, that the organization was telling me that about my own family as well. And so I think that was the first thing that was being messaged by our senior leadership is UNICEF's work is now more important than ever. But in order for you to do that work, you also have to get comfortable to a place where you are as a family. And so at the same time, I was trying to figure out how to do remote learning for my kids who go to our neighborhood school here in Evanston, and trying to figure out all the different technology and the apps and the remote learning and all these pieces. I mean, it was actually such a gift, maybe in some ways, to see what our UNICEF Jordan colleagues were doing for the whole of the Kingdom of Jordan, to get kids also working in partnership with the Kingdom, to get kids online there as well, and moving a lot of what we had been doing at following the surge of refugees into Jordan was to get kids into the public school system there. And so now to be making this other giant shift to remote learning for so many kids, it just, in so many ways, as a parent and as a very proud UNICEF staff member, I just very much felt united in this work, that across all lands, we all are elevating our work to put kids first. That said, to your point, the technology piece of it is so true and so different that, you know, in some countries, in Honduras, they've been working with the telecom companies there to get at least 3 to 4 hours of educational content onto the TV. Of course, we know that is not as enriching as being in a classroom, but it's certainly better than nothing. And in some places, that's more educational content than kids have ever had. So in this space, we're also really hearing from our colleagues across the world that, like, how do we use this as an opportunity to really build back better? How can we use these innovations and these systems and these new partnerships that are being forged overnight? How can we make sure that we are building these solutions in a way that will be resilient long after this hopefully settles down and we return to our schools or return to our places of business? Certainly it's going to look different, but how do we make sure that those remote learning platforms that we've put in place to respond to this moment can also be sort of a resilient way to keep kids learning for a myriad of reasons that kids are in and out of school around the planet. In particular, we had a briefing this week from our global education colleagues in partnership with Microsoft. UNICEF launched last fall a learning passport program for kids who are out of school globally. It's meant to follow them wherever they may be with educational content, and it's tied to the individual child, so you can also see their progress and their progression. the timeline for that effort was rapidly sped up in order to meet the present situation. And I heard a great example this past week where one of our country office colleagues reached out to the global team on day one and said, I think we might want some help bringing this learning passport online in our country. And 6 days later, they had their first kids learning. And so I think it's also just forced us to think differently about a timeline. Things that used to take weeks, months, or years are all of a sudden happening in 6 days. And I think one of the things we're also mindful of is that in some ways we can't let perfect be the enemy of progress either. I mean, any content and enriching content is going to be great. So there's a million examples of that, I think, but I perhaps will maybe just pause it there.
Oh, Catherine, I think you were interested in.
Yeah, and I don't have the raise hand button on my version of Zoom, so I'm like, I know you meant like electronically, but I'll do it the old school way. I would just say, and I'm kind of I've been called, I think the biggest compliment I have was that I'm a realistic optimist. So, and I am also, we're in the middle of a very big event. We're doing, World Fair Trade Day is tomorrow. And so we've been doing a 3-day-long World Fair Trade Day event that turned virtual. Actually, Elizabeth Ty was gonna be part of it, Turner from UNICEF, talking about trafficking. But, and tonight is our third and final night and we're having happiness hour. So I've been focusing a lot, like, what are some of the good, though not to discount the death and the pain and the suffering that so many billions of people are suffering. But one thing with fair trade that's been interesting for us, and we've been talking about this during our event the last couple of days, is suddenly the things that we've been talking about and thinking about for years are like totally mainstream and sexy, like supply chains. I mean, I'm like, a lot of people have never really thought about supply chains. We think about supply chains. We always have thought about supply chains. So the fact that that's becoming something that everyone's thinking about, we really hope is a good thing. If you want to be uplifted, one of our one of our original founding members, Marketplace Handwork of India, Pushpika Freitas from Evanston, on their website, they have an amazing blog, and they're talking about, with all their artisan partners, they partner with about 400 artisans in India, and now she has all these pictures. She's like, it's suddenly this time they're like, hey dads, like the dads are getting very involved in the children's lives, and she's got all these pictures of the dads playing board games with the kids and cooking with the kids, and so they're really that's encouraging. World Fair Trade Organization Asia has been working in about 10 different countries with fair trade groups and on mask projects. Now, a lot of the countries, like India, they can't leave at all. There's policed, whatever. One group tried and someone got arrested right away. But in Cambodia, a lot of our members are making face masks. And if you want to buy any face masks, we have a site on our website for face masks. We're also seeing too, just the appreciation for workers now. I was driving around in the North Shore, you heard this yesterday, Emily, and I saw these mansions with these signs up like, we love our grocery store workers. And, like, I hope that transfers to people, wanting to treat these workers and pay them fairly moving forward. But that's something we've never seen. And these movements for, paid sick days, things in this country that is not mandated, and people really becoming so much more aware of all of this. And finally, just something that I heard recently, though, of course, we're extremely nervous and a lot of businesses are not going to make it. And that means that a lot of these artisans, are going to lose their livelihood. But fair trade businesses are 4 times less likely to go bankrupt than regular businesses. So we're just really hoping that moving forward, we won't go back to business as usual, and people will have a much greater appreciation for fair trade.
Anyone else want to jump in and share your?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit. Our situation's a little bit different than some of these. So we believe that kids should have access to education. And the way that we have done that is by building schools. So what has happened, Angola was actually, the president shut the country down, which was great. They have 37 known cases. However, if we think we have a testing problem here, you know, they don't have tests. They don't have, and I think that's the big fear. You tell people, like somebody mentioned, you know, wash your hands. Well, there's not access to water. You have to sell on the street to survive, to be able to eat. So they've taken a lot of precautions, and all the cases that they do have are people that have flown in March from Portugal, Spain, Brazil. And so they have addressed that amazingly well. However, prior to this, you know, the healthcare system too is just incredibly weak. And so it's complicated in these places. So we have continued, and amazingly it's worked, where we've got 8 schools under construction, and that has been allowed to be underway, which is great. And those teams there in a place like that, they live on site. They always have. They live in a little tin structure and, you know, cook their meals. And so they've quarantined together. And our leadership was unable to move, and now that's been eased a bit, where they can go to some of those sites, take them materials, take them food. So that part has worked. The school system, though, weak as it is, was shut down on March 24th, which is the right thing to do. And it's supposed to go through Sunday. So, you know, the other element of what we do is really make sure those kids get in school, have that access, and then we do monitoring of that. So that has come to a standstill. And you know, there have been some attempts at remote learning, you know, a few TV programs and radio, but most people don't have electricity. You know, you don't have computers. And so it's, you know, magnifying the problem again that these kids are missing out. So the longer this goes, you know, that issue is worse, and they're adhering to things, but, you know, there's a cost. And you know, I think it kind of, for us, hangs in the balance to see how this plays out and what their next steps are as far as school opening. And then the element in the US where we raise funds, that is to be determined, I think, how that goes forward, you know, applying for grants and looking for money, and just, we really don't know. We've got incredible donors, but how will people be impacted, and what will their role be in that? So, so our mission remains the same. We haven't really been in a position to shift, but there are impacts to our teams and to what we do.
Great. Okay. Sorry, can I speak? Am I good? Okay. So just piggybacking off of kind of quite a few things that you guys have said. So our main kind of piece that's been impacted is our education program. So it's an accelerated education program that's has, like, you know, we have a campus. We actually just moved to a beautiful new big campus in January. So that's been a little bit frustrating to kind of shift gears. And especially working in, this was mentioned a few times as well, like these different contexts that aren't as digitally focused. And especially like our team, it's all, you know, papers and books, and our girls aren't used to learning, you know, digitally or remotely. And they do not have computers to be able to access and stable Wi-Fi connection. So actually, the reason that our CEO, Jalen's, not on this call is because we're working on a big proposal to kind of implement an e-learning system via like phone. So doing digital, you know, lesson plans that our teachers would put together and then distribute out. They've been doing that right now via WhatsApp, which is interesting, and they're definitely trying. The girls are so eager to do something, and very, you know, definitely missing being on campus. We also recognize like the specific population we work with are unaccompanied and orphan refugee girls. So they don't have, you know, families. They're living with each other. A lot of them are mothers. 1 in 4 of our girls is a mother. So they're homeschooling their kids on top of, you know, trying to learn digitally, which is, I think, just such a double complexity that we're looking at. And that's been something that we're trying to kind of integrate into how we'll do this e-learning piece. So I guess one thing I'm curious to hear from you guys is, if there are opportunities or ideas that you have on e-learning and how that's gone for your organizations, and especially in this time when like funding is a little bit crowded. The space is a little bit crazy right now, and especially because it's focused so much on supporting local initiatives, which is valid, but also for us who are dealing in the international space, how do we kind of navigate that in supporting our beneficiaries?
Thanks, Emily. I see Molly and then John, please.
Yeah, so I can speak at least initially to Emily's question that you just asked there, and then also want to share a couple of other things. But we, as I mentioned before, support scholarship students in Uganda. So all of our students are still in country in Uganda, and similarly, we had questions about whether our donor community, which is primarily based in the US, would continue to find our mission as a priority during this time. And we had our second annual Giving Day, which is an online fundraiser, which we felt really good about having already planned going into this time. So that was scheduled for the middle of April. And while we felt good about the logistics and infrastructure of such a fundraising day going into this sort of shelter in place time, we also were just nervous about what the outcome would be and how people would engage in it. We were really pleasantly surprised. Our goal for the day was a pretty modest number, and we ended up tripling that in the donations we received. So, and in addition to that, we had a matching donation set up for the day. So the day ended up being incredibly successful for us. I think the key learnings that we had as a result of the day were, first and foremost, our largest donors believe in our mission, and that hasn't changed as a result of what's going on in the world. If nothing else, it's made us more aware of the need, and the people here are facing all of these questions. We work in the education space, so there's so many people here talking about how students are e-learning and what that looks like and how challenging that is. And as soon as you bring into that conversation of like, what about some of the logistical pieces of internet access or different access to technology, it just magnifies that. And so I think a lot of people, even though it's not a local program that we're supporting, are even more interested in supporting it because they're recognizing that that similarity, that challenge that they're facing in their own life, and are able to empathize in a way that maybe they hadn't previously. So we've actually found that to be really helpful. Now, as we're budgeting for next year, we're recognizing that we don't expect to raise as much funds in the coming year as we did this year, and are trying to be realistic about managing that. But overall, in terms of individuals' intentions of supporting our work, we've been really happy with that result. Just to touch on a couple of things, I think we're facing very similar experiences. Lynn, you talked about what's going on in Angola, and I think what's happening in Uganda is fairly similar. The president put the country on lockdown. All of our students were sent home. So not all of our students have a home to go back to. So that was a new challenge for us to identify. Our students are staying in dorms and hostels at their universities, and all of a sudden we're told that in 2 days they needed to leave their dorms and hostels and go somewhere else without clear directive of what that would look like. So thankfully, we sort of similar to what Beth was saying earlier, we had some high five moments in that first couple of weeks where we were really grateful that we had created some new structures in this last year of our organization that allowed us to pivot quickly and to support our scholars in this incredibly important and time-sensitive time in their life. So our scholars, we shifted in December to sending funds directly to our scholars instead of to our partner organization, who would then distribute funds. And I have to say, if we still had that structure in place, our scholars would not have had access to funds because they don't all live in the same place as our partner organization's home base. Also, the timing of it ended up that in Uganda, they shut down all public transportation. And so that the schools closed on a Friday, public transportation stopped on a Monday, and thankfully all but one of our scholars was able to get to where they needed to be before that public transportation closed. So we feel really grateful that again, we were able to act so quickly to support our scholars during that time. The technology piece has been really tough. So all of our scholars do receive laptops at the beginning of their program. And so all of our scholars have a laptop, but all of our scholars don't have access to internet at their homes. They always relied on access to internet on their campuses. And so that's been a huge pivot for us just in learning how best to support them in accessing internet at home and how to do that in a way that is successful for them. All of the shops closed, so it's not like they can go and buy a modem or go and buy, different forms of technology that would help them. So all of our scholars are using their phones as hotspots to access the internet, which, as you can imagine, has, it's slow and all of that, but at least they are having access to it. I think, Emily, it was funny to hear you say that your educators are using WhatsApp as a form of education right now. We've relied really heavily on WhatsApp and email to communicate with our scholars during this time and have been really grateful that that is still easily accessible for our students. I think communication has become an even higher priority in our operations. And as things continue to change, we're constantly monitoring. The lockdown initially was just 2 weeks, and now here we are nearly 60 days later and still in lockdown for them. So we've really needed to be in communication and be able to support them as their needs arise. And I think there's lots that we have learned in this time in relation to that. The importance of having policies in place, but also recognizing the need to be flexible and recognize some of the individual differences that our scholars are facing based on their particular situation, whether that's where they're staying or how they have access to technology right now. And I think, a couple of you have mentioned that the changes that all of this have brought up have been exacerbated by much of the poverty that the constituents we support face and are surrounded by. So many of our scholars, while at school, obviously they're only responsible for taking care of themselves, they're head of households. And so as they go home or go back to home areas, not only are they making decisions to manage their own safety, they're also thinking about their younger brothers and sisters and needing to be supportive to them with whatever resources they have access to. And so being mindful of that as we continue to support our scholars has been something tricky to navigate. And I'm sure that we don't always do it in the best ways, but I think at least being mindful of it is something that has been both helpful to us and has been appreciated by our scholars. They really have been able to communicate clearly with us about some of the needs they're facing and feel heard by us, which is something that we're really proud of despite the uncertainty that exists in the world.
Thank you, Molly. I'm just going to interrupt for one quick second and ask if you have resources that you'd like to share with the team. In the interest of time, if you want to share those through the chat function, then everyone can capture that without losing that opportunity to share resources or suggestions to the team. We are, zeroing in on the end of our hour. April and I, of course, would be happy to stay on if people want to keep chatting for additional time. I'm going to hand it over to John so he can add his comments about how they've been dealing with the pandemic. But please share any resources that you have through the chat function. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to make a couple of comments about our pivot, but I just, since in the interest of time, does anyone have anything super burning that they need to get out? I was just going to talk a little bit about our, okay. Well, just quickly then, what I wanted to mention was that with CPI, we've been, working in sub-Saharan Africa, but our programming started in Haiti, and we've been working in Haiti continuously over the last 13 years. And, one of the downsides and, upsides of working in Haiti is that there is, as Joan knows and Josh would know, there's just a constant threat of, you know, we've just been through a lot. The Haitian community has been through the earthquake, multiple hurricanes, cholera epidemics, chikungunya, Zika. So that whole base of experience has provided the NGO community a lot of learnings. And I think for us as an organization, what it brought right to the fore when we started thinking about the pandemic was, first of all, kick it into gear. Like let's get over our own shock and awe, since we're dealing with this here, and let's get moving. The second thing is to just really cause us to really remember, what our mission is at this time and what our mission isn't. And so, at the time of the earthquake, we really struggled how to respond to that, realizing that we were not a disaster relief organization. We do not have massive logistical capacities. That's not really our thing. But what is it that we could do? And that really has helped us in this current environment. And so, one of the aspects on that front is to remember that for those pieces that we can deal with, let's deal with it. But for those that we can't, we can be a really strong advocate. And so we have brought certain resourcing and donors away from us to other organizations who might be better placed to deal with particular issues. So the mission thing, I think, has been a big one for us. And then just to mention that the other piece for us has been a lot of deep listening to our frontline NGOs and what they're experiencing. Because I think it's been easy, at least for me anyway, to confound our reality back here and our needs back here with what's over there. And a lot of our resource partners are kind of in that same place of wanting to react to what's over there based on their understanding of the situation here. And so grounding all of our conversations with our partnerships, first of all, in deep listening has been great. We've been on calls this past week and proceeding with Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Haiti. And all of the realities are slightly different. But what comes to the fore in my mind is that, yes, there's this huge health dynamic, prevention, precautions, treatment, all has to be dealt with. But what's really front and center, what I'm hearing from our partners, is all of these, what we think of sort of secondary things, are actually primary right now. So massive economic shocks. The remittances in Haiti, for example, are down 30%. I'm talking to some partners who are involved with the banks in Haiti. In Kenya and in Uganda and Rwanda, the supply chains for medications, for all these non-COVID things, are just food, massively disrupted. Another big theme in all of this is mental health, in just the broadest possible sense. The anxiety and fears around livelihood and income and food and medications are also been front and center. So that's helping us really frame our response in terms of what we can do and what we can ask our partners to do as a big piece. I think one of the biggest challenges, and this is probably a whole nother conversation, is our model of engagement is really a deep engagement of a lot of interaction, ideally face-to-face and through visits, both overseas and then here to the States. Obviously, that's not going to be happening. We're assuming for the next at least 12 months that there's going to be no international travel. So so we're going to be becoming more of a web Zoom based engagement, and how to do that in a really impactful way. That's not something that we do it just like we're doing today, but how do we as an organization learn from best practices and other partners to make that possible? So that's a big challenge. I would, another conversation or through offline conversations, I'd love to hear ideas about resourcing and so forth on that.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. It's been really a very fruitful and enlightening conversation. I'm particularly taken with the idea about some of the ubiquitousness of telephones and how they can become a tool in ways like sharing curriculum and hotspots, and ways that this piece of technology that exists in the developing world can become a tool under these circumstances. But also the challenges. We keep seeing some headlines, not very many, about the tsunami that's going to hit the developing world as this disease kind of explodes in very under-resourced countries, and we are all confronting that. So it's been a very fruitful conversation. I just want to wrap up in respect of everybody's time and thank you for participating. We're happy to share contact information. If you're not in contact with each other, please let us know. We'll send out a list. We are also open to suggestions for topics for additional meetings of this kind that we could host to kind of further build the community and help you connect with each other and resource each other. Let us know if there are other things that come up that have been useful to you during this pandemic that you'd like to share with each other, and we can facilitate that. Also, please help us spread the word about the Simmons Center to the global nonprofit community in the Chicagoland area, because we are hoping to build this community and strengthen the connectivity that we think is missing, and we'd like to kind of help foster that. If there's any last minute comments anyone would like to make, otherwise I just really want to say, April and I would like to thank you all for participating. It was really interesting conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good to see everybody.
Good to meet you all.
Bye.
Be well, everyone. Take care.